So the work continues on this Ferrari 365 GTC4. Still sorting out through the air conditioning, but while I'm letting it check to see if it holds pressure, one of the things I discussed with the owner was let's try to work on the windows. So Ferrari windows. So the problem with Ferrari windows or electric windows is they often get super slow. Let me show you. Half the interior is apart because I was dealing with the air conditioning, but on this particular car, the window switches are on the center console. So there you go. You can hear it really struggling. Coming down is a little bit better. Going up is pretty slow. And a lot of times what happens is with it going this slow, it's drawing so much amperage through the motor and also through the circuitry, through the switch, that you'll go halfway up, it'll get stuck, and then it'll blow a fuse. So there's a bunch of reasons why this happens. So the first thing you need to do is open up the door panel and take a look. So each car is different. And also what happens is, as people work on these cars, they put the door panels back in differently because sometimes things break, sometimes the door panels are reupholstered, and they do different things. But generally, I have an idea of how it comes apart, so I'm going to take this door panel apart and see if it goes the way a normal C4 goes. Like I said, you know, when you work on a 250 or work on a 330 or work on a 365, each door has a certain way that the factory put them together. And then as cars get restored, they're put together differently. So there's some hidden screws, things like that, tricks, but sometimes they're there, sometimes they've been changed. So let's find out on this car. So on a 365 door panel, there are not a lot of screws. You don't really see the screws, but it starts out by removing some of these knobs and handles and stuff. So first thing I do is remove the door lock, because that's attached to the inside. So we take that, put this to the side. I got a little cup here for all my parts. The next thing I'm going to do is remove this little screw here. So I can take the little cup out. That goes in there. This should pop out. A little sticky because it's their leather will sometimes stick to it, so you just gotta get that off. It looks like this car has been reupholstered at some point. And then there's a little set screw there. Pull that out, the handle comes out. And then this guy is held in here. So I got another screw behind the panel. Actually, I think this should pop out. Nope, it's actually held in. So let me see if this comes out. So that's one of the hidden screws that holds the door panel in place behind the door lock or the door handle. So that out. This should pop out. All right. You can see it's got a little tab in there, so the tab slides in and then holds that place. So we'll put that outside. Other little trick I was going to show you real quickly was a thing I learned from my mentor was use a tennis ball to hold the door open, because a lot of times what will happen especially on this door, for some reason, every time I let go of the door wants to close. And he found, and I find it also useful, is using a tennis ball, because it doesn't scratch anything. You can jam it in the door jamb, and a lot of times the door will be open and I go to close it because I forget there's a tennis ball. At least the tennis ball gives just enough resistance that says, oh yeah, I got something jammed in the door. So I won't break anything or scratch anything. It also gives it a nice little bounce to it, because what'll happen is, like, I'll open the door, and if I put something hard in there, it'll fall out. The tennis ball kind of stays in place. That's like a kind of a little neat trick. So anyway, with that all done, there is, I know on a C4, there is a hidden screw in here underneath this armrest, and I can feel it's there. So let me crawl underneath there and get this screw out. Just get it. And what that screw does, I think it's pulled out. Yep. See, that bolt holds this guy in place. See, so that screws in there, holds the armrest in place, and that's where you hide the other two hidden bolts. So what that is I think it's a 10 millimeter. Pretty long bolt. That comes out. Oh, that washer is going to come out. It looks like it's going to stay. And then what happens is this takes the whole door panel out. Now, what you have to be careful here is everybody's got different ways of securing a door. This one doesn't feel like it has a lot. Oh, it feels like some of the little... See, so somebody has replaced the original locking pins with this kind of stuff. So you just got to kind of reach around. Usually that I can feel a couple of them, but they're not really even engaged. So once you get them kind of out, then this, as most times, these doors, they have a lip that covers the weather stripping. So you kind of have to lift it up. And then I think you also have to slide it back just a little bit. And this guy, there it goes. So you got to lift it up and out, and there it goes. So you got a couple little things. The lip goes over this steel piece, and then you also just got to clear the door handles. And we've just discovered that this car was painted red at one point. So it's always interesting to find stuff when you take one of these door panels off. The other thing I noticed is there's no weather stripping or weather seal here. So they put a piece of aluminum here so it matches here, but I think I'd probably end up putting a little piece of plastic in here to keep water from dripping down in here and all that other stuff. But anyway, yeah, it looks like somebody's reupholstered this already. So we're gonna put this door panel on the trunk for safekeeping and continue with this window. Okay, window motor is back here, and it's looks like these cables have been replaced. Everything's got grease on it, so that's a good sign, because sometimes the windows are slow because these mechanisms are all kind of dirty and grungy, and the grease isn't really working well. But it looks like when this car was done, everything was done and greased, so I don't think that's the problem. I think the best way to get into this thing is to pull this speaker out, because that way I can get to the wiring, because I need to get to the window motor wiring so we can test something. All right, so let me pull the speaker out. The speaker is just held in with some sheet metal screws. And enough cable here. I think we just lay this to the side. And confirm that this is the motor. It looks like that's the motor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to test this motor with direct current from the battery. That way we have a pretty good A and B test to see how this motor feels. So it's a 2-wire motor. So on this car, you have to first check, because I'm pretty sure the later cars always had these 2-wire motors. Early cars had 2-wire, they had 3-wire motors, some had 4-wire motors. It's kind of crazy. So before you tear into window motor, you first have to find out what motor you have. So I could see that it's just 2 wires. So what that means is it's a DC motor, and it basically flips polarity. So it's just like if you run a DC motor one way, it'll turn one direction, flip the connectors, run the other way, it'll go the other way. So what I first want to do, because I can see the mechanism looks pretty good, there's 2 ways you could do it. You could put a crank in here and crank it and feel how loose the crank is. But the other way you do it is just, there's several ways. On certain cars, what I've done is I've actually disconnected the window and then just tried seeing first if the window itself in the glides moves well up and down. And then from there, run the cables without the window attached and see how well it runs without it. But quick and dirty way right now is what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some wire, run a cable off the battery, and we're going to check to see how well this thing runs, just so it's straight current from the battery. So let me get that going. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this or not, but I basically wired everything, and I just got one wire to ground, and this cable comes directly from the battery. So now you see how fast that runs? With direct current to the motor, it's like super fast. But the big test was going up. So what that tells me is that with everything running the way it should, it looks like the current going to this motor is kind of having problems. In other words, there's not enough current going to the motor. The motor's not straining. The mechanism is working. Everything in here looks like it's going well. The only thing that I have a problem with is how slow it is, because I believe that the current that's coming to this, in fact, if I put a meter on this motor, I bet you would see it's not full voltage. And you could tell because it was so slow going up, and it's just struggling. So this is a common problem with Ferrari motors, is that the whole window current runs through from the circuit board or from the fuse panel to the window switch, and then from the window switch to here. So there's a lot of areas for there to be voltage drop. And also you're running all that current through these tiny little switches, which eventually wears it out or burns it out, and then they get oxidized or they get overheated, and then you just keep losing current. So the best way to do it is to run a separate wire and relay this motor, and that way you're sending direct current like I have with this wire. I'm sending current from this wire directly from the battery, so directly from the fuse panel to the motor, and then using the little window switches to just switch the relays. The only problem that we have here is that because it's a 2-wire motor, and it switches back and forth, the ground to the current to ground, is that you have to run 2 relays so that it switches back and forth. So each time the one direction of the switch goes one way, the other direction goes the other way, you have to flip it on here. I'll show you the wiring diagram, but I have a little wiring diagram that I follow that kind of explains what I'm trying to do. So I hope it makes sense, but it's pretty basic if you understand how relays work and flipping ground and things like that, but it still requires 2 relays. I think what I'm going to end up doing is mounting it inside here, probably up somewhere, try to find a nice place to store it, and go from there. So let me get to work on that. So I roughly wired in the the window motors onto relays so that I can actually supply. You can see the large red wires of the new supply voltage that I ran up through inside the door jamb and up and around and out through to here. So what I did was supply the motors direct or current from the fuse panel to here, so that way it's not going through the switch. And the switch is still operating, but it's operating the relays. The relays are handling the current that's going to drive the motors. So now with everything hooked up, I can reach in here, operate the motors, and you can see how it's running pretty well. Now, admittedly, it's not super fast, but it's faster, and the other reason is I've been running these motors all the time. My battery's probably a little weak, but it's still certainly faster than it was. I think the big difference is going to be on the driver's side. When I do the same wiring for the driver's side, I'm going to put 2 more relays on the other side. So now all I'm going to do is fabricate a little bit of a panel and mount these inside somewhere out of the bottom so that it doesn't sit in water. It's kind of protected from some of the elements. I think I'm going to mount it on the inside here and drill a hole, secure a panel, and tuck them up in there. But on to the next side. But that's basically how you one of the solutions to fixing the issues with the windows. I mean, like I said, these windows have a lot of things that you have to look at. I mean, Ferraris use this cable mechanism, and so there's tension issues, there's roller issues, there are also alignment issues, and then there are motor issues. So all sorts of stuff. But on this one, I realized it was more to the motors and just needed better wiring so that you had more current going to the motors to operate it. So that's how you fix one of the solutions to fixing these motors on these Ferrari windows. Thanks for watching.